Welcome back to Slayerfest 98. I'm one of your hosts, May Shults, and with me is...
Ian Carlos Crawford, and joining us today we have two wonderful guests, two of my favorite humans. She is Slayerfest 98's resident girlfriend.
Liv Kaufman.
Hi, Liv.
Hi.
And he is one of my favorite guys that I saw the movie with. And we used to work together and go to school together, and now we just work together.
Yeah, and I'm Jude Miller.
Hi, Jude. Jude, this is your first time being on the podcast. I'm excited.
It is. I'm excited. Long time listener, first time guest.
So we're here to talk. I saw the TV Glow. Jude, we saw it together, and I was glad I saw it with you so we could we were sitting in my car talking about it for a while. Give us your what was your first your general reaction? So
I knew very little about the movie before you were like, yo, Jude, you want to go see this movie with me? And I thought it was very powerful the first time through. I think it's brave of you to have me on this podcast as somebody who has never watched a single episode of Buffy, and I'm going to own that fact. That's not true. I watched one episode of it with you this past winter. But as someone who has never seen Buffy, I thought this movie worked so exceptionally well and was super powerfully done. And I feel I think my Letterboxd review is if David Lynch had actually had something to say about marginalized people, and I say that as a tremendous David Lynch fan.
No, but
yeah,
it is accurate.
So real.
Liv, you texted me after you had seen it, and you've seen it a few times, right? Give us your general reaction to the movie.
I was like, go, bitch. Well, I had heard about the movie prior because it was all this stuff coming out that was Phoebe Bridgers, I'm obsessed with. All these people I love. Bridget Lundy Payne has been my celebrity crush for years. Funny enough, we don't have time. I did run into them in Brooklyn 3 months ago, hit on them, embarrassed myself. It was really funny. I'll give you the tight line that my come up was you're a really good dancer. Needless to say, it did not go anywhere. Anyway, so I see Bridget's attached, Phoebe Bridgers is attached, and the director's Sapphic Spielberg. I didn't even know Jane at the time, so I was like, oh, maybe it's a lesbian. I didn't, just that was their Twitter handle, whatever, that I was seeing this. I was like, clearly this is stuff I'm interested in. And then that was months and months ago, whatever. And then Amber gets linked to it even. And I know it's very little part, but I'm like, okay, Buffy, there's a reason. These are dyke thoughts. All of these things to round. There's something gay here. I'm going to love it. So I was very excited, and kind of went into it not knowing too much of, because I think they did a good job in marketing it where they did not give it away. They definitely want you to think it's a little bit more something else than maybe a little more sci-fi than it is, which I appreciated because I think I would have been upset had I known exactly where it went going into it. And luckily, so I finished it the first time through and I was just jaw drop. I was like, wait, what happened? And I was at an advanced screening that Jane Schoenbrunn was at and did a Q&A after. And I'm so grateful because I'm dumb and I am gay, but I'm cis. So there was groups of people that immediately got it and were immediately the egg crack moment. But hearing Jane talk about it was it took me longer to process in a way, you know what I mean? To because I had the emotional feeling, but it took me longer to put all the pieces together because I was so fixated, I think, on the Buffy of it and then this of this. And then I saw it a second time and I was like, I get it. Not that I didn't get it the first time, but it was oh, I can pick up on the way that this is tied together. And I still think I could watch it 40 more times and have 40 more interpretations, which I love. But it was funny that I was other people understand more than me here. I am going to quietly listen to their questions in the Q&A and internalize and understand.
And that's something that I wish more people would do. Oh, I don't quite get this. Maybe I should listen to the people that do. So I admire you for that.
Thank you. Sometimes it is important to know to shut up.
And Liv, you and I talked a lot, but I feel we're both pretty good at that. Knowing okay, let me just listen to people.
But I think that's good because the thing is not every single person who sees the movie is going to immediately get it.
Right.
In that inherent sense, but that's good. You need more people who aren't to understand the process of everybody who is.
Yeah, I agree. May, what'd you think after you first watched it?
Oh, this movie fucking destroyed me. This movie was... I feel like Jane made this movie for me, and I got to see it here in Chicago at the Music Box for its Chicago premiere, and Jane was there for a Q&A in person, and I grew up watching and being obsessed with Are You Afraid of the Dark on Snick every Saturday night, and Pete and Pete, and Buffy. So... And then as I got a little bit older, I think I started getting into David Lynch when I was like 12 or something. But I had bought the Lost Highway soundtrack in 1997, which is what got me into Nine Inch Nails, who are still one of my favorite bands. But my mom was like, you can't watch the movie yet. So I had to wait to watch the movie until I was 12.
It's cute.
Yeah. So all of these things that I grew up loving and obsessing over were synthesized into this movie in such a beautiful way that felt new and fresh and unique while still paying homage to them and being referential but also reverential to them. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to rip off all this shit that I grew up watching and throw it in a blender and see what happens. It was like, let me take the most impactful parts of this and wrap it in the sense of nostalgia that we have about things that can sometimes sour when we revisit those things, and use that to tell a story about someone not being able to express themselves authentically. And that's why it destroyed me. I mean, I'm 37. I have known I was trans since I was like, I don't know, 10. And I came out first as trans at 14, but I didn't do anything about it until I was 34, because I was in horrible relationships for most of my adult life where I could not do anything about it. So I really related to Owen and his struggles in this movie. And just, yeah, there was a moment in particular in the movie that I can hold off and talk about later, but I was openly weeping in the theater for a full 5 minutes.
So Jude and I saw it together, and I was like, I don't know if, like, for me, it felt so specific. Yeah. To like, I even felt, and I'm a cis dude, but for me, it was like, this feels so specific for me. Is Jude gonna like this? So I like love that you still really loved it, Jude. And there was so many things that were like, so specific, right? Like the feeling that at least 3 out of the 4 of us have felt about Buffy, where it's like, oh, I love, like, these are my friends. I love this. I need to consume all of it. And how, like, it was like, shut up, time for Buffy. Like, please don't talk to me. I need to watch Buffy. And how so many, like, I feel like so many of us young, we're like, well, I'm not young, but like when we were younger, it was like shit like that was like so important and made us feel like we had friends. And like, for me, I'm like, there's a direct line from like what this movie is about to me doing this podcast. Like, right? Like, that's why I wanted to do it. So I could talk to other people about the shit that I love.
Yeah.
Because when you're a kid, it is sometimes hard, especially if you're not, like the boy that likes sports and the girl that just wants to play with whatever stereotypes parents like put their kids in. If you don't fit that, it was hard to have like kids to talk about stuff with. My neighbors growing up that lived across the street, sweet kids, but I was like, I'm sure this will not surprise any of you. I was like bossy, and I'd be like, well, we're going to play X-Men, and we're going to play with the toys, and you play with these characters, and I play with these ones, and this is the plot we're playing. And they didn't know what the fuck X-Men were, but they'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll play. But like no one else.
I would have loved that. Someone else telling me what to do so I could just get into it.
And like, so for me, I like even though I wasn't a kid when Buffy, I was already like, I'm like mid-teen when Buffy came out. I very much felt that, and like them bonding by just sitting watching was so real too. Like, right? Like, I feel like even as adults, you do bond with friends like that. Like, Jude, I feel like, when we have movie nights, it's like we're sitting on the couch watching a thing, right? Like, that's how you become friends, and you become comfortable with someone where you can just like, we're going to sit and watch this and we don't have to talk, or we can.
I think even on the meta level of that is that like, sometimes you're overtaken with the emotion because you're so involved in what you're watching that like sometimes you want to break it down and like totally analyze it, and sometimes you just need to like sit silently and like process how much internal stuff is going on for you. And I wanted to comment that it's on the meta version of like, when I finished this movie, even though I had to like analyze it more, in my head to see it a second time. It still stayed with me emotionally. Like, I left the theater and was like sat on the subway, like just, you know what I mean? Eyes glazed over, like in my head, because I was emotionally in slight turmoil, hope. Like, I was consumed by it. I was like, I have to really, like, this is on me. Like, I can't just be like, okay, on to the next. Like, what am I eating for dinner? Like, in it and kind of with it. And I think, sometimes just to have somebody that gets that you're like that deep about it. I don't know. It's meta. It was like cool to be both times I was either in an audience of all these people who cared. And the second time I saw it was my friend Chase, who I met through Buffy Twitter and is trans and a huge Buffy fan. And Buffy was a huge part in like his identity and whatever in certain parts of his life. And I was like, you and I, you come with me to see movie. You may hate it, but we will have things to talk about. And we did. We sat on like a bench for hours. And it was like, this movie is giving us that, what we maybe got from these 90s shows in this way of like, let's talk about it. Like, oh God, I have a well.
Yeah. I mean, along those lines, Liv, is like, Ian and I feel like we sat in your car for like a full hour afterwards and like just kind of like chewed over like key parts of it. I sincerely appreciated like very detailed like annotations you gave, particularly for the ending. Like, you helped me kind of feel very differently about the ending than I initially did. And, May, when you were talking about like the experience of watching like Lost Highway for the first time, like as a teenager, right? Like, and connecting to that soundtrack, like, I guess walking back what I said a little bit earlier, which sounded a lot maybe like a David Lynch dig, but like, I feel like this movie took sort of like many of the key moves and sort of the template that David Lynch built for like sort of, how do you make something unsettling in a way that's just vibes and camera angles and like use of like kind of grinding audio and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In particular, I mean, it's obviously like, part of the title of the movie, but the scenes in Inland Empire where it's just the rabbits like watching TV and they feel really unsettling, and like, that there's like some statement in there about it or sort of how we respond to televised media and ways that can sort of be like jarring. But I feel like this movie took that basic setup and uses it for like, obviously a much more like, it has something to say with that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the thing that because I also like David Lynch, Jude, and I know you do too, but I do think your like David Lynch with something to say is.
I have a Twin Peaks tattoo. I obviously like David Lynch. Amazing.
So wait, I think amongst the four of us, we all have tattoos that can relate to this movie. I think, Liv, do you have one? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, I also have a Buffy tattoo.
Because I have a Buffy tattoo. Jude has a Phoebe Bridgers tattoo. And May, you literally have a tattoo from the movie.
This is a mirror with a ghost in it, so don't tell me that that's not fucking trans.
Well, here, for the people watching, here's my I Saw the TV Glow tattoo.
So sick.
So good. I love that it's in the exact spot where they have theirs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we decided not to do it the same color from the movie because kind of going along with the themes of the movie of things not always being exactly how you remember them, we wanted to kind of make it our own.
Love. And
my artist is amazing. She was like, well, I've never done UV ink, but I can just make it look like it's glowing. And we were all like, okay.
That's sick. Cool. Yeah, when we left, I feel, Jude, you were like, I have a tattoo of, like, you were like very, which I didn't even know that you had, Jude, until you told me that. But the movie I would have liked even if it was just the vibes, because I felt the vibes were fucking impeccable. And it did do the David Lynch thing of being unsettling. But I thought it also did a really good job that David Lynch doesn't always do of, it got the unsettling vibes, but it also got the vibes of like, these two people like are learning to love each other through this like shared interests that they have. Mm-hmm. And like, I thought it did the teens so well too. Like the fact that they barely talk to each other. And when he goes to sit with Maddie on the bleachers after whatever amount of time has passed, and they don't really talk, right? Like they kind of say a few things and she's like, I like girls, just so you know. And he's like, yeah, that's not why I'm talking to you. I like TV shows and they're just awkward. I really, really liked that because, so often, Buffy included, so it's not like whatever. So often we get like, sexy 25-year-olds that are like confident and like cool and like dressed all like super high fashion and hot. And I thought they like, even though I know Justice Smith at least is not a teenager, they dressed them like 90s teens and were wearing like, their hoodies or like their baggy jeans and were kind of like, hunched over.
I really want to note that I particularly loved in that exact scene when Owen knocks his bag over and like they awkwardly leave it in where he's like sorry, I'm gesturing, like I'm gesturing of him like awkwardly like picking it up, and it's like she's just not commenting, but we're like knowing that he like made a loud noise. I'm like, that is so like that kind of like leave-in sets the vibe exactly of like the awkwardness of that kind of teen interaction that is so high school.
Something that I think is really interesting is a lot of people, kind of myself included, went into this thinking it was going to be more of a horror movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still think it is a horror movie. It's just not a traditional horror movie because the horror of it is existence in something that doesn't feel right. Not just in a world that doesn't feel right, but in a body that doesn't feel right. So I think for people who do understand it on more than just a textual level, which if that is all you're getting out of the movie and you like it or don't like it, that is totally fine.
Yeah.
If you are able to look past that and see a little bit deeper into it, there really is a lot there. It's not like people are pulling these readings out of their asses.
Right.
It was all very intentional. And I think that's where the horror of it comes in. As much as I was frustrated by that final scene in the movie, I've talked to a lot of people about this. I kind of wish that the movie had either ended with Owen in the bathroom, opening up his abdomen and seeing like, oh, there really is another world that I am supposed to be a part of. I wish it had either ended there or ended with him waking up as Isabel in the pink opaque, which is the real world that Owen is from. Owen is really Isabel. Yeah. It's, the whole thing isn't a metaphor. Isabel has been imprisoned in the body of Owen in this made up reality. And I wish we had seen Owen get back to being Isabel. And that final scene where Owen is walking through the arcade and just apologizing to everybody and being ignored is one of the most realistic parts of the movie. It's if you have caused a problem, people will be horrified at you. Or if you just exist as a trans person in the world, people will be horrified at you. But then when you try to apologize, when you try to address it and make other people comfortable, you are completely ignored. And so even though it wasn't the ending I wanted, it hit really fucking hard.
It is crazy how contested the ending has been, because seeing it maybe a little bit in advance, and then now that it's out on VOD or whatever, and more people have seen it, I have seen endless dialogue about the ending, which I didn't super see from all the people doing advanced screening, which obviously maybe just more people have watched it, but also that the big argument, I think, I don't know if we're doing a plot by plot review of this, or if we can jump around.
Yeah.
Sorry to the ending, but seeing people really debate, is it happy? Is it sad? And needing there to be an answer. And I think one of the beautiful things is it is up for interpretation. Two, Jane has said that they want to make with the whole cast, how many, what did they say? A sequel, but maybe a book, or that they wanted to continue the story in some way and they weren't sure how.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sorry, I got confused because I couldn't remember if they said book or movie, but that they had ideas of how it would continue on to something else.
In our recording, they at least wanted to do a sequel, and they had a sequel in mind. Yeah.
So that it was some kind of even their first movie was part of this whole screen verse, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought it's what direction would they go in if they made the sequel? Would it be that we're back in the pink opaque? Or would it be you know what I mean? That I wonder if it was purposely kept to be somewhat open to a second iteration.
So talking about that ending, I wanted to say I I looked up a bunch of pieces, and Emily St. James, who I actually had on Slayerfest for a Buffy episode a while back, wrote a piece for Vulture that's entitled, I Saw the TV Glow's Ending is Full of Hope If You Want It to Be. And Jane even said this in our recording, that like you come out and then sometimes nothing really changes. Sometimes you come out and you expect things to be different, but it's not. And it will change over time, but it doesn't change right away. And Jane seemed to confirm that was kind of what they were going for with this ending. But also, I mean, I said this to Jude after we saw it, the plot is the plot of Normal Again, the Buffy season 6 episode. And that is also how that episode ends, right? We also go back to, it's like, we know that Buffy is real and a real character in that universe. But even after she comes out of the delusion, we go back to the delusion where like the doctor's like, oh, we've lost her. And like, it's supposed to be like, in that world, she's in a coma now.
I literally watched that episode today.
Yeah. And like, I did ask Jane, I was like, is that your favorite episode of Buffy? And they were like, no, it just happened to be the one that I referenced.
Like Rocco from my podcast, his review for this movie was, so what I'm getting is that Jane Schoenbrunn really wanted Buffy to end after season 5. Which I still haven't really figured out what he means by that, but you know, that's just Rocco being a contrarian.
Can I ask you guys, and sorry if this is going in a weird direction, but something that I really felt from it as like a Buffy in a queer sense. Okay, in terms of it being horror, I was like, and I'm not that I'm such a scaredy cat, but I was extra disturbed by Mr. Melancholy. Like that like that scene to me was not just like kitty horror, like the lunar juice, that whole scene. It's like, and you won't even know you're dying. I was like not breathing, sat back. And
that was absolutely the most terrifying part of the movie.
Yeah. And not even on the exact, like obviously the textual level, it is scary. It's the scary music. It's meant to be scary, but like the implication of it, and especially putting them in the grave, my Buffy, and obviously it's like you are meant to have Buffy callbacks. And I think because Buffy has become such an academic, you know, we made it in a way like where there's so much, the font is there. Like I think Jane is wanting me to evoke, if you want to, relations. I kind of sat with this, and me and Chase, my friend, went like so back and forth on all the ways that this could mean Buffy. But like season 6, episode 1, which I lined up in that is their season 5 ending, and then blah, blah, blah. Like I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Buffy in the grave, digging herself, you know, out, almost as if she never could. Like as if she, like, what would it mean for us to have this great ending for Buffy? And we think she's in heaven and they're trying to move on, but she's alive in the grave, like can't get out or something. Like, I don't know. It put me into that episode. Like, what if we didn't finish the end of season 6, episode 1 and 2? And that's like where, like, and that added an extra horror element to me because of my parasocial relationship with Buffy the Vampire Slayer characters, of adding that on to the own fear of all these characters that I'm now caring about. And I wondered if anyone else saw a comparison there or picked that up a little bit, and that, or if my head just went there.
No, totally.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think part of the reason I both love and hate season 6 of Buffy is it's about the horror of existence.
Yeah.
And it's about the horror of existence after you think you're done with it. And as someone who has struggled with SI my entire life, that is very real. The horror of existence can be a daily struggle. And especially if you are trans and you are not able to be your authentic self, it feels like you are buried alive. It feels like you were buried alive in your own fucking body.
Yep.
And yeah, that whole part with Mr. Melancholy, who is played by a woman, by the way, which I think makes it a little more uncanny and unsettling in a way that a lot of other films and TV shows in the past have done the opposite way, where they cast male actors to play female parts as a way to make it unsettling, like Zelda in Pet Sematary. So they kind of flipped that around, and it just the idea of this person being like, or this villain being like, hey, I'm going to bury you alive and you won't even know that you're dying because I am so determined to keep you from being your actual self.
Yeah.
That felt like a very large commentary on our society and how it tries to suppress trans existence.
100%.
Liv, you might be able to better answer this since you listened to it more recently than I have. Jane said there was someone that they wanted for that role that they couldn't get. And then it's the same person who plays all like the monster characters. And that woman is a dancer. And Jane was like, well, this works actually really well. But there was someone that was like a nostalgic callback that they want. I can't remember who it was.
I haven't listened to the episode yet, but was it Billy Corgan?
No, it was not.
I realized after reading, I spent, the next week after watching this movie just reading like letterboxd review after letterboxd review of the movie. I didn't realize until afterwards that Owen's father was played by Fred Durst.
Fred Durst. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this guy looks familiar. He looks unsettling. Like something's like he's obviously like tuned out in front of the TV. But it just added like sort of like a just a like an entire like kind of like meta level of interpretation for that. Him as the like kind of father figure in there for me.
Jane said that Fred Durst was like the nicest and like hung out with the crew between
that's great
filming, and did also say that because I was like, how did you get Fred Durst? Right. And they're like, we just emailed him and he was down.
That's awesome.
And I was like, what? Like I would not expect Fred, right? Like Fred Durst is not someone you would think like a trans writer director is like, I'm making a movie about, a horror movie that's also an allegory for being trans, and someone like Fred Durst being like, yeah, sounds awesome, I'm in. But I love that he was.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The other thing they said was they tried to get him to wear the red hat, but Jane was like, I was too scared to ask him. I had someone else ask him, and he was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that, which like, fair enough.
At least he wasn't wearing a bucket hat, which he's been wearing lately. They just put that on fucking Isabel.
Isabel got the like Willow Rosenberg stupid hat treatment as fuck. And I was just like, I know what this is.
Yeah. I know what that hat is a reference to.
Tara and Isabel in the hat have weird tension. Shocker.
I did like a brief rewatch to like screenshot some stuff for content and whatever. I don't know how I missed because it's so like, the show is talked about so like quickly when they talk about it. It's like in pieces. Mm-hmm. I fully missed that Isabel and Tara are like, one of them's like, they're not together ever. Like they're not
on opposite sides of the county.
Right. They met at summer camp, overnight camp, which also reminded me of The Parent Trap, the Lindsay Lohan version. Totally. And I don't know if that reference was intentional, but I really hope so.
Something random I did want to say about the characters in there and their styling is my friend Chase had pointed this out, shouting out Chase because great opinions from him. He was saying that the Tara character in The Pink Opaque also felt like an amalgamation basically of like Buffy, Tara, and like maybe even a little Cordelia, because he was like that Estee Lauder line was like almost a Cordelia line.
Yes.
And like it's kind of like Butch Buffy, but also all these things. And I was like, there is something really satisfying because like that's what I would want to do if I could, bring those characters back in some way. It was fun to like, not everything has to be a one-to-one direct.
Right.
Like, but it's taking these elements and putting it in and like, that makes such sense to me. Like Maddie would be like, that's me, yo.
Yeah.
Like, my life kind of sucks, but like, I'm cool Butch Tara. Like, even on that end, it's so fun. Like the styling, it was so interesting to me versus like, Isabel with the like more wonder-like sense and like quirky and these like little, and especially because I feel like Owen is dressed very plainly a lot of the time, like very 90s boy plainly, that like it all plays into it to me, that it would be like there's so much that he can't express.
Yeah. When I was younger and in boy mode, it was always jeans and a t-shirt that and hoodies. That was all I fucking wore. And then as an adult in boy mode, I had a fucking beard, and I know, right? And I like I wore like skinny jeans with button-up shirts and ties or bow ties and suspenders or vests and shit like that. And it was like I was trying so hard to run away from who I actually was because I was with people who weren't supportive of me being trans. And so it's just like that pendulum swing all the way to the other end from a position that was originally kind of neutral. Jeans and a t-shirt is pretty neutral, both in terms of gender and in terms of like flamboyant expression, whether masc or femme. And yeah, it's just like that got pushed into the wrong direction for a long time. And now I dress like so super high femme all the time. I haven't worn a pair of pants since February 2021. Mm-hmm. And it's been the best 3.5 years of my life.
Well, you're making such a good point, because it's like, regardless of, you know, we get the vibe from Owen, you know, Fredger's the one line of, isn't that a girl show? That like, if Owen wanted to wear a whimsical hat, even a male whimsical hat,
right?
Clearly that would not be you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, even my ex-wife used to get upset if I put a hair clip in.
I mean, along those lines, one thing that, like, you know, I feel like the movie, in my opinion, it did a good job of leaving like direct violence off screen, and like things like that microaggression, like from his dad, is like that one line, right? So like, I feel like there's the line about Maddie when Owen sleeps over. She's like, we have to be careful. If you get caught, like, my stepfather's going to beat me up again, or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I feel like there may be the insinuation that like Owen's father is potentially abusive.
Yeah.
But you know, if not physically, then you get that comment, right? But, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, another thing I appreciate about the movie that made it very different from a lot of David Lynch movies is that it leaves that stuff completely off the screen in a way that, you know, is still very unsettling.
Yes, because David Lynch would absolutely, everyone would have been beaten up and also maybe raped if this were.
Yeah, I will never be able to rewatch that one episode of season 3 of Twin Peaks that is basically just like Misogyny, the short film.
Yeah,
period.
And like we're ragging on David Lynch, but we do like David Lynch. It's just there's a lot of.
I love Twin Peaks: The Return, and I think that was a very effective episode because I feel like David Lynch has done a lot that's around the violence that men do to women, and he never approaches it from a place of neutrality. He always approaches it from a place of, this is bad. This is not something that should be done. And I am going to shove it in your face so that you fucking get that.
Yeah.
And so, again, very effective episode. I just will never watch that episode again when I rewatch season 3.
No, I mean, I was going to go on my Audrey rant, but I will save that for another time. I do think, Jude, you're right. That was really effective because I did assume Fred Durst. And you're right. I guess aside from when he pulls him out of the TV, but that's like... that's like something
you can take that to mean what you will, because that's how I felt. It's like, because that was one of the things the first time I was watching it, where I was thinking too textual, and I was like, wait, is he seeing this? Like, when I was like, is this going to go more sci-fi? Like, I don't know. And then it's kind of like, well, it could be abuse, or it could just be microaggression after microaggression that pulls him out of seeing his true self. You know what I mean? That pushes him farther away.
Yeah, I actually interpreted that as the dad character being a function of this alternate world that was constructed to trap them, and him essentially being like a guardian preventing Owen from getting back to being it.
That was how I read that too, actually. I read it as like, it's like the dad suddenly stomps in because the dad knows that, Owen's getting too close to like passing over or going back to the real dimension.
Yeah,
so
that's the only time we see him really doing something active. Everything else in the movie, he is so passive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come across as him trying to save Owen in any way. No. It comes across as him trying to prevent him from doing something.
Do you think there's something to be said about, like, I felt this way, and I don't know if it's 100%, but like, I was like, I feel this could have been different if his mom was still alive,
Oh, absolutely.
Because clearly I felt support from the mother, maybe not in so many words, but like there's definitely an element of like that, when you lose somebody who you may have had in your corner. Yeah. And now even these roles have changed in the household, even whatever. It's like, exactly, like, even in the metaphysical sense of that's like, well, I killed off the person that would have helped you.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes you're 41 and you relate to that.
But really, like...
Well, I mean, along those lines, Liv, one really small scene that stuck with me was when his mom takes him into the voting booth as a very young kid. And I forget exactly what the dialogue is, but it's something to the effect of like, we're doing this again, like it's another election cycle or something like that. And I don't know. I'm curious to hear folks' thoughts, but that seems to me like a signal of a parent trying to instill, like, you have agency, you have power, like you have a place in the world. Like, I'm going to educate you on civics.
It almost felt like Owen's mom within the world of the fake reality that Owen is trapped in was almost like a free radical, like what's her name from the Truman Show, trying to show Truman like, hey, this is all made up, this is all fake. And it's almost like that's what the mom character was doing. And
I can see that,
that's why she was killed off, because that could have led to Owen becoming untrapped in this reality.
It's so true. Like, that's, I don't know, we can get so meta with it, but like she's being slowly poisoned by this juice and then it kills her and she dies. But like she was resisting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I
didn't be there to try to help.
I didn't even think about that, but that reading does make sense as well. Because one would assume this reality does not want any of the kids being like, yes, I can, think for myself. And the mom was kind of encouraging that. And the mom was also, isn't it, he's in the back seat when he's like, Mom, can I sleep over? Blah, blah, blah. And like, the dad's kind of like, and the mom's like, well, let's see. Like the mom's like petting his head. And you could tell she at the very least was like more nurturing, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you think back, right. And if you think back to a lot of the shows that this is referencing, that's true. Even Are You Afraid of the Dark? You look at episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? If there's a mom, even if she doesn't necessarily believe her kid, she still cares. She still tries to help, even if she's clueless. Because every episode of Goosebumps, every Goosebumps book is like, adults are useless. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Moms are not useless. Dads are useless, but moms are not. Moms are there to support you and care about you, even if they don't always believe everything spooky that you're telling them is happening. And you look at Joyce versus Hank Summers. And even though Joyce occasionally has moments of sucking, for the most part, she was great. She was wonderful. She was lovely, and she was supportive of Buffy. And like, we all felt a loss when we watched The Body because she was such an important character to show an adult woman who is doing her best to be a single mom and be supportive in very unique circumstances. So this really just felt like a huge callback to all of those moms.
I hadn't thought about the Are You Afraid of the Dark, but you are right. A lot of those, it was like the mom would get on board eventually. Very like the mom in Fright Night. Like that was kind of how the moms were in Are You Afraid of the Dark? And also,
I love the mom in Fright Night so much.
Me too. There's also the Pete and Pete of it all, right? I didn't realize till afterwards. Did I tell you this, Jude, that the two guys...
the two Pete's are in it.
That's Pete and Pete. Like those are the actors that play Pete and Pete.
Pete and Pete.
Yeah, and like I asked Jane about that, and they said like again, I was like, "How'd you get those guys?" And they were like, "I just emailed them." They still like apparently one of them's apparently like a PA on sets. Like that's his job. So they were like, "Well, he's still working like on sets," and the other one I just emailed them and said that one of the Pete's wife went into labor when they were filming that scene.
Oh my God.
One of you mentioned this earlier. Jane did a really good job of like, these are homages, these are callbacks without it being, I don't know.
It doesn't feel like a ripoff.
Yeah, because sometimes those homages and those like whatever, like feel too much and like weigh something down.
Yeah.
And it is impressive to say this is not because there are so many references in this, but it really doesn't feel weighed down by them. Like, you know, watching it, I didn't realize that was Pete and Pete, and I still was like, oh, that's creepy. You know, Jude hasn't seen Buffy, but still was able to be like, oh yeah, that's the show that they're watching. I'm like, the fact that we could all still enjoy it, it's a really good, like, credit to Jane's writing, to the acting. Like, I just feel like in lesser hands, it would have absolutely drowned in its own references, right?
I think it's one of those things that like you get to enjoy on whatever level you want to, in like all senses. As May was saying, you know, like if you can get it on this really deeper level, you can, and it's like in the reference level. If you get this reference, you get it good. If you don't, you don't. Like you can still enjoy it, and you can like have watched. Okay. I want to just one thing that you talked about in your interview with Jane and Amber that I just thought was so I had to like pause to my girlfriend in the car and be like, I have to talk about this with you. And she's like, what? Is that the and I texted you about this, that it's like the point in which Amber Benson, who played Tara in Buffy, obviously has the cameo is when Owen's character is at this like breakdown, basically, and looks like a safe person. You know, obviously we wish it could have been in a better way, but like is looking to just be like, help right now. Like I can't help. I don't, and I get it. Cause in one hand, it's like all the things that make you say, it's like the mom's dying. Are you going to leave right now? Like I got all the pulls of like why at that exact moment it went into like a breakdown instead. And who comes and like gives a hug and doesn't mean it's all over and safe, but it's like, it's Amber Benson. And I was thinking on one level, you're just like, okay, you can just, this is a point in the movie, move on. On a second level, you can be like, oh, cool, that's like Sarah. On a third level, you're like in this meta where I'm like, oh my God, the actor who, you know, played this queer character, the one of the few textually queer characters of Buffy, who got K-worded off violently and traumatized us all. And it was this point about like, even the movie in a whole, like, the dangers of us caring so much about the media that we interact with and like how that can, like I, in watching Buffy as like a full adult in COVID, like had to mourn the loss of Tara and before I could continue the show for like 2 months. Like I had to sit in mourning and was in pain over this character and how like that can be a problem to like feel that deeply about.
Yes.
Like, you know, a show to affect in place of like real life relationships and emotions.
Was that your first time watching through?
Oh yeah, deeply was like, and which was honestly great though, because I was like, got to feel it so deeply because I was like 22, 23 at my parents' house and I felt like a teenager again. And so I got to really feel the feelings. I was like unemployed, had just started to call like where I was like in this fully in my childhood bedroom, which was great lending to me getting to have like the full experience uninterrupted.
Yeah.
So I'm happy it happened that way, I guess. But where I was like in mourning, and then I love what it was such a comfort for me in afterwards is like Amber Benson being a cool person who like loves gay people and loves to be cool and do good things and show up and like hold responsibility for like the way that the media that she didn't write has affected people.
Yeah.
So like here I am back to the I saw the TV glow in this moment of all the things of like the good and the bad of us having these parasocial relationships so deeply with the media. It's like for that to be the person to give this character a hug, like there is a level in that, especially I feel like people who watch Buffy in the time it airs have like discovered their queerness later where you're like, you know, I can imagine if there's something, if you in any way were like, oh my, like that's the person to give you a hug for a second and be like, okay, we can powwow here for a minute. And like,
that was one of the moments in the movie that made me cry because I talked about this on, I think, my first Slayer Fest episode. Buffy and Tara were not only like a queer awakening for me, because I already knew I was queer, but they were what made me realize, oh, I'm definitely a girl. And I definitely want a girlfriend who's a witch.
Yes.
May I love the specificity of that and
relatable.
Yeah.
Type witch.
Hey, I had already been obsessed with Return to Oz since I was like a tiny child, and then of course seeing Farouja Balk in The Craft a few years later, I was just like, yep, I want a girlfriend who's a witch. And then I saw Willow and Tara. I was like, oh, and I'm also a girl and I want to be a witch too.
You're like, and it's two witches actually.
There are two witches inside you.
And they're both in really long, ugly skirts.
And I was going to say, you're getting spit roasted.
Period.
Well, Jude, the way that actor's character is killed is like awful. Like she is.
It's the next episode I'm on in my current rewatch.
Oof. It's like I will skip that. Like I'll skip that ending. The whole last
being really generous, tolerating my like complete.
And like, but that's it. Like
it's brutal.
Yeah,
yeah.
She gets like her and her girlfriend have just like reconnected and are like being cutesy and like have
also,
just
like the first time she's like really in her ownness is like her own like fully confident realized self basically. And it's like she gets shot through the chest like it and you see the
by
bullet
a stray bullet.
Yeah.
A guy like comes in the backyard to shoot Buffy and he does get Buffy but like doesn't kill her and then like is running away shooting the gun and a stray bullet kills her. And it is so awful and hurtful and
especially on a show where most of the violence is magical or supernatural, to have something so not pedestrian but so commonplace as a gun kill
an incel with a gun killed a lesbian. Like, thanks for that mystical horror.
And like Amber always exudes warmth. Like as Tara, she exudes warmth. I have interviewed her a bunch of times. I've seen her in person. Like that warmth is not much of acting. That warmth is her. Like she is that warm. And that's why it was so perfect to have her cameo be that scene of her like hugging him. Like I told them in the I had to pee and I was waiting. So I was like, Amber told me it's a chance. Cause I emailed Amber about doing an episode and this was like before it came out. And she was like, well, it's just a cameo. You know, it's possible that I might be edited out. And I was like,
no way.
I was like, that means it's so short that I can't leave to pee because I could miss it in like 2 minutes. So I was like waiting. And then when she came on screen, I was like teary eyed. And then the scene ended. I was like, okay, now I can go pee. But look, was like teary eyed.
It is because it's like when you have these horrible reactions to like the thing that it was the comfort for me in watching Buffy in feeling so mournful, even 20 years later, was getting to go look at Amber Benson on socials and being cool and awesome and be like, oh, she grew up. She's not dead. And she's not even gay. Right. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, this cool, like, at least I get to have, you know what I mean? In this, all the versions of it that we have, you know, our connections to the media, like it's real. And I think this whole movie is meta in many senses. So it's like, there is that. And then, you know, something like that. And like there is still time, very clear. It's like in the one reality, you might get shot dead, whatever. Like, but that's, you know, you can have such a strong feeling from one thing. That doesn't mean there's no other option.
Right.
On how to process it. And I think it just added to that whole message that it's trying to get across. And especially in that, and it's like, yes, it's a nod and you can, but on all those levels of like, she's alive and she's caring for somebody.
Yeah. And like,
you might not be queer and dead.
Yeah.
Wild.
One real quick small point, and I hate to drill down too much into this, but I think it's like such a small move that illustrates how, microaggression-y and like oppressive his father is that I'm getting the times generally wrong, but he's in the backseat of the car and he's like, can I watch the Pink Opaque tonight or whatever? And his dad's like, isn't that a show for girl? It's like, it comes on at 10:30 and his dad's like, your bedtime's 10:15. And I was like, as a parent, I'm like, this is a bullshit ass bed. That's not a real bedtime. Like that's just a bedtime made up to restrict your kid from watching this one thing that they're clearly deeply identifying with.
And I've had people on Slayerfest say, like, for their Buffy origin, oh, like, I couldn't watch it with my parents around because, you know, if they were a boy, it was like, well, that's a show for girls. And, like, they would be nervous to watch it around whatever homophobic parent. So, like,
I'm very thankful my mom watched it with me.
Same. Yeah. My mom, my mom was the one that got me into it. And, like, it's whenever we talk about, I can never think of like Tara's death without thinking of my mom crying. Because I remember my mom as a Puerto Rican mother, talked way too much to watch something with, so I couldn't watch it with her. It was, she would watch it in her bedroom, I would watch it in mine, and during commercials, I would go into her room to talk to her about it.
Oh,
and
I love that.
I remember like going to talk to her after that and her just like crying in her bed and being like, my heart hurts for Willow, and just like so upset, and like me crying too, and like us just like sitting on her bed crying. And like, I know that I lucked out with that because I know that a lot of, parents were like that. And I do know a lot of like gay men I've had on this podcast that were like, oh, I had to sneak it because, my parents didn't want me watching a show for girls. So it was wild, like hearing Fred Durst, what a sentence, hearing Fred Durst say that, it was like, oh yeah, I know so many people that have told me that's what their dad said about watching the show.
I just wanted to touch on the scene that really completely destroyed me in this movie. So I love King Woman, the band King Woman, and Chris, especially the front woman. She is incredible. She's one of the best musicians I've ever seen perform. I screamed along with her whole show when I saw her a couple years ago with my BFF Erica. And the song Psychic Wound in particular, I have a very strong connection to. And the scene where she's performing that at the bar and Owen and Maddie are sitting there talking, I was just covered in goosebumps, and I felt something in me just kind of shaking. And then a few scenes later, when Owen is cleaning the theater and his voiceover says, maybe I really was someone different, someone beautiful and powerful. That's when I started weeping. And I was seeing the movie with Erica, and she literally just grabbed my hand and held it real tight for the whole time I was crying because I could not stop. That felt so real. Yeah. And it felt just so visceral for someone to have that thought out loud, because that's all I ever wanted. I just wanted to be a beautiful, powerful woman, and not powerful in a domineering sense, but powerful in the sense that I could express myself authentically. And just seeing Owen miss the opportunity to go back with Maddie and to be Isabel, who is Owen's true self in my reading of the film, was so fucking heartbreaking. It's like being so close to your truth and not being able to touch it.
Make me cry, May.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to cry right now, but yeah, that fucking destroyed me, and I wept for 5 minutes, and then I was just kind of lightly crying through the end of the movie. And after the Q&A, Maeve, who's one of the people I got this tattoo with, who's my roommate and is also trans, we went home and we just sat on the couch and talked about the movie for an hour and cried the whole time. And it was really cathartic, and it was really beautiful. And I still cannot think of that part without crying or almost crying. So Jane really knows what the fuck they're doing, and I cannot wait to see what they do next.
They do, and I do think that is one thing, why I have the record behind me, not only because I love the film, but because the music rocked and also was super symbolic and used so effectively. And I obviously it's different, but in my queer identity have one of my tattoos is for Violet by Holt, grungy, loud, screamy, yelly, whatever you want to call it when you're disparaging it, music. When you can't verbalize exactly what you're saying, I think in terms of their identity, especially, sometimes you just need to scream. And I love Phoebe, and Phoebe being in it, I'm get it, girl, that, sometimes you just need to that's what it feels like. It feels and it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's scary and it's all the things to scream, to let it out. And it's to have that in the background, that's the club, first the sad of looking at my black bedrooms, which I love the song, but you know what I mean? Because I can't even want to tell if my eyes are shut, this. And that's the sad music into just the cathartic screaming. I do think it pointed that so well of that is what needs to happen. And it's right there. Not even in just all the explanation. It's even can you even focus in on that? And Jane in the Q&A was talking about how like that they, before they had come out and transition, had been hanging out in like a lot of dyke spaces with like dykey punk rock kind of, and like was like, I couldn't fully participate because like I didn't feel like I was part of it, but like I like these were my friends, and I understood that feeling too. And you're like, not, you know, but it feels right internally, and I did feel that like reflect, you know what I mean? It was very interesting of like that can call to you in a specific way, not like in all music, but like that kind of just cathartic, loud noise, and that it's inside of you, and it obviously comes out so much in the film visually that way. But like static noise, whatever, you can call it such nothingness, but it's not.
So two things. Before you say the thing you're about to say, Jude, because I'm going to have you say the thing.
Okay.
May and I were just talking about this yesterday, how like also that is not that common for queer representation, right? Like it can be hard to find that niche queer corner of like, and there's nothing wrong with listening to just like pop stars, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But like that
I have my Muna shirt next to my I Saw the TV Glow. Like we love our pop.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it can be harder when you're queer, but also like, you know, it's like, yeah, I also just want to see like a hot person who's screaming sometimes. And like, I like, you know, those were the shows I went to, like pop punk or like screamo stuff were like the only shows I went to concert wise when I was younger. And
I listen to and make metal. So,
and like, that's hard when you're younger and queer. It's like, then you have like these 10 different things up in the air, and, you know, like add in fucking nerd, and then it's even harder, right? Especially back in the day, 'cause it was mostly like, oh, that's only for like straight dudes, but like, no, there's plenty of us queers that, you know, love Buffy and love whatever nerd shit. But yes, the music was great. Jude, I'm going to call on you because Jude is my favorite music snob. I was driving him home like a few months ago and I was like, don't say anything. My Chemical Romance is about to come on.
I would never
do that. Is this My Chemical Romance? Oh.
I just think it was what you were listening to. That's all. No, there was the scene when they play the needle drops in this were like perfect. And when they did the needle drop of the version of the Broken Social Scene song.
Anthems for a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah. Like, this song's great. I love this song, like from when I was in college, which was 20 years ago. So, you know,
we old Jude.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for 20 years, Jude.
We were friends when that record came out, and it was like in my car for the entire year. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, and that was like my senior year of high school, driving around in my car and blasting that.
Because it's another form of media that we can find each other through.
Yes.
You know, like you can find your people through like, oh, no wonder that the one safe place we can talk that's like neutral territory is the Bronze, but gay and punker.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It was funny for me. Like, that's the in between. Like, oh, is that like we're basically on the precipice between worlds here? Like, this is
The vibe was very like queer punk bar. Yes,
you know what I mean.
So
and that's
funny too because on Fangs for the Memories they always call it Christian teen nightclub, the Bronze, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was a world in which this movie doesn't work for me, but it just does. Like, I feel like if one thing leaned more one way or the other, it's possible that maybe I wouldn't have liked this movie, but like, it fucking worked so well for me. I think I said this to you when we left the theater, Jude. I don't know that the twist fully worked for me at the time. Like, when it first was presented, I was like, I don't know. But like, it still didn't take away from how much I love the movie. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, and thinking about it, it's like, yeah, sure, that's just what the movie does. It doesn't bother me. I don't know that it landed, but then it did. If that makes sense. Like, I don't know.
Sometimes it takes a little bit to absorb something.
When she was like first telling him, because also, but I mean, I guess this is part of the point too. I understood why Owen might be like, yeah, but I can't bury myself alive because what if that's not true? Like,
yes.
Well, and that's where my reading comes back in, where you already are buried alive, baby.
True.
Like,
100%.
By being trapped in this body and in this world, that's what you're doing to yourself. You are trapped alive or buried alive in a body that is not yours.
That is true. Yeah. And like, that's another thing that I loved is that because those decisions, it was like fully run away and be on your own at like, how old were they? Like 16 or 15?
16.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that is scary, right? Like, I don't know that I would have been able to do that if I ran out. I probably would have died. Like, I barely know how to do shit at 41, like 15-year-old me, like not. And so
that's like the realistic. It's like you might realize things about yourself and your identity in high school and not be able to do something about it at the time.
Yes.
I think it's sadder for us upon the return where we're like, oh, but you've lived and you know this is no longer right. Well, now live your truth. But it's not too late to do it, even in your older age. It might just.
Yeah. And like, I mean, so kind of circling back to what you said earlier at the very ending of the movie, May, was like when I walked out of the theater, I was like, if they cut the last scene, I was mad about that, like the last scene being there. And, because I think it is an exceptional piece of art, it warrants thinking, discussion. And the more that I think about it, read about it, discuss it with friends, the more lenses I see on it, the better, like, I understand certain parts of it. And I realize now that what I was mad about leaving the theater was not how the movie ended. It was accepting the reality that Owen has the realization about themselves and then has to go back to be like the apologetic, meek employee at the Funplex or whatever it's called.
Exactly.
His
big
boss
agree.
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the fucking head.
Yeah, no, and what I didn't, because I've like read a bunch of reviews and stuff, there's also an in conversation between Jane and Richard Kelly, who did Donnie Darko and recommended Interview Magazine, that I didn't even realize this is after she says this is the last time he will see her. After that is when we see the chalk on the street and it says there is still time. Mm-hmm. And like, for me, that like tiny sliver of hope is like fully pushes me through to be like, okay, great. I'm going to hold on to that hope because I do understand the bleakness, but I also feel like it's bleak, but I don't know that I read it as like when, what Emily St. James says is a hopeful, but I have hope. I don't read it as a hopeful ending, but I have hope for the ending that like, well, Maddie did write in chalk on the road, like there is still time. And that's very close to the ending. And after she's already said he won't see her again, I feel like I have hope that Owen, like we talked about how it's like you can come out and then it's like, well, shit still sucks. Like it still sucked for Owen, but I do believe Owen had that full on realization and is not going to pretend that, oh, well, that's a scary, weird thing that they're talking about. Owen is like, yes, that is real. Like, yes, that is the reality. I don't think Owen is questioning it anymore. So for me, it's like, I have hope that Owen could make it. Right. Because also, with supernatural shows, right? Like you can bring a character back to life. You do whatever the hell you want. It's a supernatural universe. So like, sure, maybe that was Maddie's last time of coming through, but Owen could do something else to like make.
Well, and that's the last time Owen's going to see Maddie in that world as Maddie, not the last time he's going to see Tara.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the scene that made me fully cry. Like I just just seeing it. I was like, sometimes I'm a dum-dum and I want an explicit message. And I think that it's like, sometimes you just need to see that. And I think for some people, they probably won't ever be able to transition until their oppressive parent dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for some people that is unfortunately the reality and we want to change that. But like, unfortunately, there are situations I know where like that person has to be dead for you to really feel like you can finally, and it shouldn't be that way, obviously, but like,
unfortunately,
those people still need that message, that still is important to be out there. And
this movie is going to crack so many fucking eggs.
Well, that was the whole thing, and the Q&A after was that, and also them talking about how it's not just a transition in terms of trans, like, 'cause people are like, well, then what did Maddie transition to? And it's like, chill. Like a dyke to a dyke. I don't know. But it's like, the point is like, it's the transition from so many things before, like transformation from screen to like there's so many on that.
She transformed from a dyke to a dyke with psychic powers.
Awesome. That's all I want.
When are you getting that transformation?
I'm trying every night. But I'm like, it's a symbol. Like, it's talking so much about transformation and it's not only within that one sense. And I think it's like, if I left wanting anything even weeks later, it's not having any dissatisfaction with the piece of media the way it is. I loved it. And I think it served a perfect purpose in that way. it's just being a dork and like wanting more of the pink opaque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that. I want to see what happens like in that world. I want to see season 6, episode 1 in the little sheets of paper that were out there. Like I want to see that. It's like,
well, no, that's what we did see. That's what the movie was. So we want to see episode 2.
Exactly. So it's like, it's not dissatisfaction with it in itself. It's like, I want the sequel. And I would like more of scenes within, you know, getting to see that in that show. And that is the beauty of the Supernaturals. He can be 15 again, wake up like as the characters.
I really hope that if we do get a sequel, it is 100% in the pink opaque. Like it starts out with Isabel waking up and being dug out of that fucking grave by Tara.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Along those lines, if there is a sequel, just the title of it is The Pink Opaque.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I'm like reading like, you know, a bunch of Letterboxd reviews like I'm like, can I just get like Pink Opaque fanfic? Like does that exist? It's got to exist out there.
Oh wait, I sent Ian. Somebody is so in my head. I do have to just say this really quick. It's an archive it's on AO3. Somebody wrote a fan fiction about Isabel and Tara as if it was posted on like an Isabel and Tara message board, like in 1999, like, and then they write like author's notes as if they were the author, like going through like them not up to, I found this and I thought I'd finish it and crazy that we never got this finale and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, somebody gets me so hard. Like I want this. Is when I watched Buffy, I was not satisfied with AO3. I had to go to the Internet Archive to find the actual Willow and Tara fan fiction from 1999.
How long was that one? Tell them all how long that one was, Liv.
Oh, my like multi-chapter. I was reading really scary ones. I contacted an author from a fake email address and was pretended, and they were so cool and awesome and sent me, this was like 20 years after they wrote fan fiction about Willow and Tara, sent me their fucking raw file. I had a lovely human interaction, but like there is something like, I was like, that is like, I watch that and that is the mindset I go into as well. And like, it's just funny because it's so like, I love when things can make you feel that much. And it's like, that is what you're invoking when you go back to these tiny things, is like the way we found community too. In that it was like on these very specific message boards, people writing about this. Yeah. And also I saw someone writing like that kind of thing where they say it starts off with like, if we were to sequel, like seeing in the orb, basically in the snow globe, like Owen watching the TV and that kind of like twisting back into, you know, that is the you know what I mean?
I love that. I love that both of our brains, it's like goes to like, let me see some fan fiction.
Obviously. Well, because I also had this, I'm not going to say this because it's too long, but it's very short. Isabel and Tara, I was like, okay, obviously Maddie and Owen don't have any romance, but is the only, when there's like a flirty look that Maddie gives Owen. And to me, I'm like, well, she's a lesbian. So is even more in the point that if they were to have any sort of romantic undertone to this relationship, it is that she is also a woman. Like this is two women. And obviously I don't think that that's totally it, but Tara and Isabel, I think it's like, if that was on TV and I was watching the pickup, I would be like having a Tara and Isabel fan fiction and like a poster on my wall. Like
absolutely.
That would be so June, I don't know if anyone else felt that on that level too.
Yeah, like 100%.
When she draws it on the back of his neck, it's like kind of erotic, but like she has made it clear that she is not attracted to Owen, but I think, I think Tara and Isabel.
Tara might be attracted to Isabel. And I thought it was just even more confirmation on that.
I agree.
To me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love a trans lesbian. This is perfect. Like, this is what I want. But I was like, exactly. But I was like, that is like, I love that it's also, we get to tell more than one trans story too, that it's not just like, you know what I mean? The totally like homogeneous, like binary, like it can be all these transformations. Like, and I liked having that. We're not saying anything about that, but on a subtle level that like, you can be trans and gay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Like,
we
can talk about that too.
The movie did a good job of, the metaphors were metaphors, but also there was like the story, but also there's like the interpretations, but also the story like leaves itself open for those, but doesn't close the door on any of those other interpretations, which I like.
You can enjoy it to whatever level you want to.
Yeah. You know, Yeah. Kind of like the very basic level, like how people were mad when they were like, oh, X-Men's woke now. And it's like, no. It has always been like this. You can enjoy it however you want. You can enjoy it as like cool people with superpowers. You can enjoy it as the like allegory that it is. You can enjoy it, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter.
But if you're a Nazi, you don't get to enjoy it. And you should go fuck yourself.
Right, yeah.
It's not for you, bitch.
Exactly.
Go watch Marvel or some shit.
I like that you just said that. I was just referencing X-Men.
I don't know. Are they the same?
Yeah, they're Marvel.
Oh, well, I meant like the superheroes. X-Men are different. I thought X-Men was cooler and had comics.
Anyway,
like, the cool gays liked X-Men.
Well, yeah, duh.
I thought like Marvel was for, like the straights.
Well, that's why I do feel like that's why there's like so many different, because I do feel like X-Men has the bigger queer fan base, and like the thing I like about
X-Men, it's pissing people off. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are at the end. What was your favorite scene, Liv?
Oh God, me first. Honestly, probably the scene where Maddie's giving the monologue.
In the bar,
inside of the blow up.
Oh,
the planetarium.
The planetarium. Thank you. The blow up tent. That sounded dirty. Just because
so
one, I've already said it. Like, I love Brig as an actor, and like they are captivating to me, and I just thought they fucking delivered so hard on urgency, on restlessness, on fear, I just was so like tuned and tapped in that I was like, I have to come with you. Like, I felt it so intensely, and I felt like it was saying everything we wanted to say and symbolic, but also just like straight up to the point. Like, I wanted to die, and I died, and thank God I did, because now I get to live. And I just felt like if you don't get to see Owen do it, you know that Maddie successfully did it in a way. And it's like, so, you know what I mean? It's like, somebody's going to do it, and it's possible, and I'm here to help you. Come do it with me. I don't know. I loved it.
May?
I'm going to have to echo that. That scene was just so beautiful and heartbreaking, and it made me want to rescue every trans kid who doesn't feel like they can transition.
Jude?
Gosh. Well, I mean, echoing everything everybody said, but also the scene with Mr. Melancholy was just so creepily well done, with like his like pulsating moon face. Like, I can't, whatever.
It gives me the creepies to think about it. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't Billy Corgan. Too scary.
Too much.
Jude, I think that's also because it like that was such a good mix of the horror, and like you also then it's like that's when you start like almost taking the pink opaque, the show that they're like more seriously. It's like, oh shit, and like spoon feeding her the like weird green goo or whatever, and it's like spilling out of her mouth. Like, that wasn't like at that moment it wasn't like a silly teen show, but it was like, ooh, this is a like horror movie scene.
Yeah, there are like nocturnal emissions, non-consensually like slathered on people and stuff. Like, that was like I think the most like violent scene in the whole movie.
Yeah, and then I mean, like you both mentioned, there's the pulsating weird moon head also looked like scary and worked really well. Like, it didn't look stupid. And I feel like describing it would sound stupid, right? Like, oh, there's this creepy moon face, and it like is kind of growing and not growing. I don't know. But yeah, I guess we're probably all going to give it the same grade.
Favorite outfit?
I wasn't going to do favorite outfit because I don't remember outfit. I do not remember the outfits.
Which Tara? Sorry, go ahead.
There you go. Okay, would you have one?
I love when we see that scene of Owen wearing the dress and that smile on his face, because let me tell you, I've been there. The first time I put on a dress as an adult, I started weeping, because I was like, this feels so right, and it feels so powerful, and it's all I want.
Yeah, I also thought it was very interesting that in the dress, it was with, even though it wasn't exactly a Buffy dress, but like holding the big scythe looking ass thing.
Yeah.
It was very much a Cordelia dress.
It was, but it
that
called
was a
to me
Cordelia
like
dress.
to Slayerfest, not literally. It all comes back, but literally the images of them from Slayerfest '98, the episode. It was like giving that to me so fully, and it's like of all the women to evoke in this moment, like what a powerful feeling to have. You know what I mean? Just like holding the weapon in the dress, like you can be both. You can do. I don't know. You know what I mean? I very much was like, that's intentional.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I loved it.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for listening. If you like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can watch our videos on YouTube and Spotify. And you should subscribe to us, give us a good rating. You can support us on Patreon. We're going through X-Men the Animated Series, Batman the Animated Series. We just finished Buffy Season 3 for its 25th anniversary. You can find us on social at SlayerFestX98. If you want to follow me, I'm at Ian X Carlos. May, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Everson Poe. That's EversonPoe. You can find me on The Lady Killers, doing weekly episodes on your favorite feminine rage-filled women. We just released our Midsummer episode, and my friend Haley texted me while we were recording this to say it's our best episode yet. So nice. I feel very, very good about that. You'll be able to hear me on some upcoming episodes of Tender Subject, which is one of Kate's other podcasts, Kate from Thanks for the Memories. And yeah, here on Slayerfest 98.
Cool. And Liv, where can everyone find you?
You can find me subscribing to the Lady Killers, a Feminine Rage podcast on Spotify as we speak. Right up my jam alley. You can also find me on Twitter at Willow Rosenboob and on TikTok pissing people off.
Oh my god, that's so good.
It is the best handle. Yes. Jude, where can everyone find you?
I think probably the most interesting place to find me is maybe on my very modest Letterboxd account. I think it's just Jude Miller. That's it.
All right, fair enough. Well, we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.